Daylight crept through the dusty lace curtains of the hidden past, Oakshade's beloved antique shop, casting thin beams across the array of curious relics and hidden treasures. Cecilia Bell, the shop's proprietor and a dedicated antique collector, stood behind the large oak counter, carefully examining an ornate lockbox. She had come upon it just a day ago, tucked away in the back of her storeroom behind a stack of battered trunks. Its key, if there was one, had been lost for decades. Despite her skill in determining an item's age or origin, she had yet to figure out how to crack this lockbox open. "Oh, Cecilia, you've been fussing over that thing for far too long," came a light-hearted voice from behind her. Cecilia turned to see her friend Marla, the owner of Books and Beans, a local cafe bookstore hybrid known for its robust cappuccinos and comfortable reading nooks. Mama was carrying a small satchel. She placed it on the counter and slid next to Cecilia. "You plan on taking any breaks today?" Cecilia exhaled, stepping away from the lockbox. "I just can't figure it out. The mechanism must be jammed. It's a beautiful box, though. The craftsmanship suggests it's from around the time Oakshade was first founded." Marla leaned over, her keen eyes narrowing at the box's intricate etchings. Loops, circles, and twining vines that formed an elaborate pattern. Late 1000s, 700s, right? I love that era. Curiosity shining in her eyes, she gave Cecilia a pointed look. "Maybe you need the perfect tool to open it. Or maybe the lock is designed to be trickier than average. You ever consider consulting old records? Or maybe even the hardware historian, Mr. Watts?" Cecilia tapped her chin, pondering Marla's suggestion. "It's worth a try. If that doesn't work, we might find someone who can pick it. But I have a hunch the key might be hidden in plain sight somewhere. After all, most mysteries are just waiting for the right pair of eyes." Marla laughed as she linked arms with Cecilia. "Come on, we're going for a walk. You need fresh air, and we can pop by the library to see if we can find something in the old town archives. You never know what bits of information might help." The two friends left the hidden past, stepping into the crisp fall morning. Oakshade was a small, tight-knit community with a long history dating back to the late 1700s. Cobblestone sidewalks wound around centuries-old oaks, vibrant flower boxes perched on windowsills, and neighbors greeted one another with waves as they passed. Along the main street, brick facades were adorned with quaint wooden signs for the bakery, the bookstore, and the apothecary. It was the kind of town where rumors spread like wildfire, but always seemed to fan a gentle sense of camaraderie rather than conflict. As they made their way to the library, a younger woman with a bright scarf came jogging toward them. She was out of breath and grinning. "Cecilia, I was hoping to catch you before you got too busy," she said. "Morning, Veronica," Cecilia greeted warmly. Veronica James was a local historian, finishing up her dissertation on early settlement patterns in the region. She had often partnered with Cecilia to identify the origins of certain antiques. Veronica took a moment to compose herself. "I heard you found something new and possibly important," she asked, referring to the lockbox. She could hardly contain her excitement as she spoke. "Anything that might broaden our knowledge about Oakshade's founding families is huge news for me," Cecilia chuckled. "I'd be happy to show you what I've found, if I could just open it." Marla gave Veronica a playful nudge with her elbow. "Stick around long enough, and I'm sure Cecilia will figure it out." They all laughed, then parted ways, with Veronica promising to pop into the hidden past in the afternoon. Meanwhile, Cecilia and Marla continued on toward the library, an old red-brick building with towering windows. Inside, the smell of old paper and well-worn leather bindings washed over them. The librarians knew them by name, and they were shown to a small section holding genealogical records and ledgers from the 1700s. After an hour of searching, Marla leaned back in her chair and rubbed her eyes. "We have the founding date, some details about how the founder, Silas Oakshade, led a band of settlers here from the coast. Nothing about a lockbox, though." Cecilia, reviewing an archival journal, paused at a faint notation. "This is interesting. there's a mention of a special gift that Silas purportedly received from a wealthy friend in London. Something about it being a vessel of truth, locked forever. Could be just a rumor or a dramatic flourish, but it might refer to the box. Marla nodded thoughtfully. Vessel of truth. Sounds like a fancy way of describing something that could hold secrets. Or literally hold some piece of writing, maybe. Deciding they'd gleaned all they could from the archives for now, the two women headed back to the hidden past. Veronica was already there, sifting through a series of old estate ledgers at a reading table in the stall's corner. At the sight of Cecilia, Veronica closed the books and rushed over. I think I've found something you should see. She placed a slim ledger in front of Cecilia. Inside, they discovered a note referencing the existence of bound manuscripts belonging to Silas Oakshade. It mentioned an old trunk that had once been in the possession of Silas's granddaughter. Most intriguing was a short line casually mentioning a lockbox that was custom-made for Silas to guard vital documents. Oh, so there's more than just the lockbox, Cecilia said, excitement stirring in her voice. There might be journals or letters. Veronica beamed. Exactly. The journals were rumored to contain private reflections, but no one knows where they ended up. If we track those down, we might uncover clues about the lockbox's key, or find some historical tidbits about Oakshade that have never come to light. Energized by this revelation, Cecilia and Veronica spent the rest of the afternoon going through records of estate sales. From the late 1700s, they discovered that Silas's granddaughter had married into the Brant family, who had once owned a sprawling farm at the edge of Oakshade. A note explained that upon her death, some Oakshade family heirlooms were buried in an old outbuilding to protect them from theft or fire. Over time, the outbuilding collapsed, and its contents were forgotten. Could the journals still be there? Asked Marla. Veronica shrugged. It's worth a visit. The property's now a small orchard run by the Lesters. They're a friendly bunch and might let us investigate. Though the sun was setting, they were too excited to wait. Cecilia, Marla, and Veronica hopped into Cecilia's old pickup truck. A 10-minute drive took them to the farmland that once belonged to the Brants. Rows of apple trees stood to attention, their leaves turning brilliant shades of gold and crimson in the fading evening light. The large farmhouse glowed under the last rays of sun, a sign reading Lester's Orchard. They walked up to the main house and introduced themselves to Mr. Lester, an older gentleman with a kindly smile. Cecilia explained their quest to locate the rumoured outbuilding. Mr. Lester nodded and led them around the back of the orchard until they reached a dilapidated barn. Behind it, partially swallowed by tangles of weeds and wild berries, was the outline of what must have once been the smaller structure. Feel free to take a look, Mr. Lester offered, pointing a flashlight. I've never poked around here too much. Didn't want to risk stepping on a rotting board. But if you folks are careful, you're welcome to see what's there. Armed with flashlights and gloves, Cecilia, Marla, and Veronica cautiously made their way through the wild growth. The walls were collapsed, forming a kind of roofless rectangle on the ground. Stacked at one corner were the remains of crates and a few broken trunks. Marla carefully shone her flashlight while Veronica crouched to poke through a cluster of debris. Cecilia's heart nearly skipped a beat as the beam of her flashlight revealed the corner of something leather-bound. She gently tugged it free from the rubble, and out came a water-stained, aged journal. A thrill washed over her. This is it! It has Celia's initials right on the cover. S.O. Marla and Veronica looked at each other with wide eyes. Re-energized by the discovery, they continued searching, coming upon 3 more journals in varying states of decay. Cecilia carefully set them aside. By the time they finished, darkness had fully descended. Mr. Lester helped them load their finds into the truck. Promising to come back another day to see if there was anything more, they drove away, anticipation thrumming. Back at the hidden past, they set the journals on a sturdy wooden table under a lamp. Each journal's cover was softened by time, their pages yellowed and partially crumbling. Together, they decided to start with the one in the best condition to avoid further damaging the others. As they carefully opened the journal, they discovered pages filled with Silas Oakshade's neat, slanting handwriting. He wrote about the struggles of building a settlement in an unfamiliar land, the forging of alliances with nearby households, and even the challenges of dealing with suspicious travelers. Near the end of the first journal, a passage referred to a momentous betrayal. Silas expressed anger and heartbreak, though he never named the individual responsible. "My confidant has proven to be a serpent at my breast," read Marla, her voice hushed with awe, "and I pray that, in the centuries to come, none shall unearth the truths I have locked away." They exchanged stunned glances as they turned the final pages. He wrote vaguely of the lockbox, describing it as the keeper of a record that could unravel Oakshade's foundation. Silas worried that, if the secret became known, the entire town might slip into disarray. Upon reading this, Cecilia glanced at the locked metal box perched on a nearby shelf. Could it contain evidence of this betrayal? Over the next few days, Cecilia and her friends pored over the other journals, gleaning bits of scattered references to a trusted collaborator named Thomas Greenwood. Greenwood was, according to Silas's writing, not only a co-founder, but also a close companion. Silas mentioned forging the earliest documents with Greenwood and trusting him with responsibilities over the settlement's finances. Later entries revealed how Greenwood conspired with outsiders to undermine Silas's leadership, perhaps skimming funds or trading land illegally. Yet the journals hinted that it went deeper. Silas used words like reckoning and ruination, implying that Greenwood's actions had greater weight than mere theft. One crisp afternoon, after a full day of reading and analyzing, Cecilia reclined in her wooden desk chair, fingertips pressed against her temples to concentrate. If Greenwood betrayed Silas, it could explain why Silas was so secretive about these documents, but we still don't know exactly what was so damning. Veronica's eyes sparkled with scholarly intrigue. "I suspect the lockbox holds the final secret, like the culminating piece of the puzzle." "But how do we open it?" Cecilia murmured thoughtfully. "If the key was passed on through the Oakshade family, but we found no reference to it in the journals." Marla tapped on the side of the lockbox, admiring the intricate filigree. "Maybe the box itself is the key, in a way. These shapes and symbols carved into the metal, they almost look like the patterns of Oakshade's orchard. You see how these circles layer like tree rings?" The next day, Veronica took photographs of the box for further study. She also scoured the journals for any references to orchard patterns or geometric shapes. Finally, in a hidden margin note scrawled in Latin, she spotted a cryptic message: "What the orchard yields, the vines will unlock." Veronica recited the translation, and the three women stared at each other. Could it be referencing the orchard or some wooden apparatus shaped like vines? They decided to visit an old orchard on the outskirts of Oakshade that was rumoured to be older than the Leicester farm. So old, in fact, that some said it predated the official founding of the town. The orchard's caretaker, Miss Purley, was a direct descendant of one of the founding families. She welcomed them with a warm smile and a wave, leading them to an ancient, thick trunk of a tree with gnarled branches that twisted overhead. Closer inspection revealed faint carvings in the bark. Cecilia gently traced her fingers over the carvings. They looked to be swirls and circles that echoed the lockbox's pattern. "Could this be it?" she asked. In the hush that followed, Miss Purley exclaimed, "You know, my grandma used to keep an old pruning hook that was passed down for generations. They said it had a special shape, carved vines on the handle. She never used it. It was more like a showpiece. Let me go fetch it." She trotted back to her farmhouse and promptly returned with a polished wooden hook. Its handle was decorated with curling vines, meticulously carved, matching the pattern on the lockbox exactly. Marla's eyes widened. "Maybe it fits the box somehow, like a key." They drove back to the hidden past with the hook, an almost giddy atmosphere filling the truck. Once inside, they laid the pruning hook onto the lockbox. Remarkably, one end of the carved vines aligned with an indentation on the box's surface, something that, until that moment, didn't look like an indentation at all. A gentle twist made the mechanism inside the lock click, and the lid popped open with a soft groan of old hinges. What lay before them was a cache of documents, yellowed pages covered in Silas Oakshade's distinctive handwriting. Cecilia's heart pounded as she carefully lifted the papers out, not wanting to damage them. The topmost pages revealed a financial register, detailing how vast sums of money had been siphoned away from Oakshade's community funds. The next sheet exposed how Thomas Greenwood had plotted with external land speculators to sell off territory earmarked for the soon-to-be incorporated Oakshade. The result would have drastically altered the settlement and, more important, would have cornered Silas financially and politically. At the bottom of the lockbox was a letter from Greenwood to Silas, threatening that if Silas spoke out about the secret deals, Greenwood would claim Silas orchestrated it all himself. Cecilia read softly, "If you do not comply, I shall ensure that your name is forever tarnished. Let Oakshade be your ruin should you stand in my way." The friends exchanged troubled glances. Silas had discovered Greenwood's betrayal just in time to save the town from losing most of its land, but at an immense personal toll. It was no wonder Silas wrote that these truths would wreak havoc if discovered. People had long revered Greenwood as one of Oakshade's earliest benefactors, not realizing that he had nearly destroyed the town from within. After a thoughtful pause, Marla put her hand on Cecilia's shoulder. "We can't just bury this history back in the ground, but we also need to present it carefully." Veronica nodded, feeling both a historian's excitement and the heavy responsibility of revealing new facts. Documentation like this can correct our understanding of Oakshade's past. People deserve to know the truth, even if it tarnishes Greenwood's legacy. Silas's name deserves vindication. Safely storing the pages, they conferred about how to proceed. Veronica was certain that the Historical Society would want to host these documents in a protected archival environment. They might also hold a special exhibit. Yet the final decision, she insisted, rested with Cecilia, because she had discovered the lockbox and acquired the journals. During the next few weeks, word quietly spread that Cecilia had uncovered something noteworthy about Oakshade's history. Town elders and local families buzzed with speculation. Some suspected newly discovered letters. Others wondered if it proved Oakshade's founder had a hidden scandal. Eager crowds began frequenting the hidden path to see if Cecilia might reveal more. True to her gentle nature, she deflected the questions, but assured neighbors that, when the time was right, everyone would learn the truth. Finally, one sunny Saturday afternoon, the Oakshade Historical Society hosted a special event at the small museum in the heart of town. The building originally served as the old courthouse and boasted large windows framed by green shutters, giving it a timeless charm. The crowd gathered in neat rows of folding chairs. Cecilia, Marla, Veronica, and a handful of local historians arranged the lockbox and the newly preserved documents for a presentation. A hush fell. Veronica began the talk, introducing the story behind Silas Oakshade and the overshadowed co-founder Thomas Greenwood. Then she invited Cecilia to share the details of their findings. Though she was no formal speaker, Cecilia's warm demeanor and deep passion for artifacts kept everyone spellbound. She explained how the journals led them to the orchard's pruning hook, which finally opened Silas's lockbox. At each revelation, from the missing funds to the external land deals, ripples of shock and dismay swelled through the audience. Greenwood, in Oakshade lore, had always been treated like a devout ally of Silas. Now, centuries later, the scales fell from Oakshade's collective eyes. In the final portion of her talk, Cecilia read some of Silas's sad but determined lines, how he had suppressed this information to protect Oakshade from fracturing. When Silas wrote these words, he must have felt trapped. Cecilia concluded. He feared that if the townspeople learned of Greenwood's betrayal, the entire settlement might crumble. His own name would be smeared, or Greenwood would close ranks with outside forces to harm Oakshade. Ultimately, Silas sacrificed his own desire for justice so our town could flourish, unburdened by Greenwood's corruption. The crowd was silent for a moment, digesting this new perspective. Then, gently, one of the older citizens stood and addressed the gathering. She expressed gratitude for finally learning the truth. Others in the room nodded in agreement, some wearing expressions of relief, others shaking their heads in astonishment that a story this important had stayed hidden. A wave of murmured conversation stirred among them. The overall sentiment was clear: to honor Silas's memory with a more accurate history, letting his sacrifices be recognized, even if it meant tarnishing a once revered figure. After the talk ended, a line formed to view the documents. Soft exclamations drifted through the air as townspeople glimpsed Silas's handwriting up close, some even reaching out to gently run their fingers over the lockbox. Others marveled at the orchard's pruning hook, remarking at how a simple wooden tool had become the crucial key. Throughout the evening, the sense of community deepened, as though pulling away the veil of Greenwood's deception bound them all more firmly. Some time later, after the event had wound down, Cecilia and her friends lingered on the museum's porch, watching a magnificent sunset streak the sky in warm tones of orange and lavender. They felt a soft mix of fatigue and elation. They had uncovered a centuries-old secret, pieced it together, and respectfully revealed it to the town. There was a peace to that knowledge. Marla sighed contentedly, leaning against a pillar. "Well, my dear detective of antiques, you've officially changed Oakshade's history." Cecilia laughed, modestly protesting the description. "I'm no detective, just a collector. But I'm glad we brought the truth to light. Silas deserves it." Veronica stepped to their side, an unspoken gladness shining in her eyes. This was the perfect example of how preserving artifacts means we also preserve the truth. And now that truth is free. In the weeks that followed, the Oakshade Historical Society updated its exhibits to include a section on Thomas Greenwood. Display cases held copies of the damning documents, while the original items were kept in a temperature-controlled archive for safekeeping. Tours by local schoolchildren now included discussions about moral complexity and how communities face hidden threats. Some modern parallels were drawn, reinforcing the lesson that vigilance and honesty are timeless virtues. Cecilia resumed her normal routine at the hidden past. She still welcomed frequent visitors, who often came in out of curiosity about the lockbox or the journals. She happily recounted the tale to those who asked, though never embellishing it beyond what was actually discovered. Neighbours began bringing their own family heirlooms for her to examine, wondering aloud if there might be more hidden secrets in Oakshade's nooks and crannies. Late one evening, after clearing the display table where the lockbox used to sit, Cecilia found herself alone in her shop. A bittersweet feeling washed over her. She thought of Silas Oakshade, a brave settler, who bore a heavy secret to protect the future of the town he loved. She found herself murmuring a quiet thanks to him. With the final lights dimmed, Cecilia locked up and walked out onto the moonlit street. The ancient oaks rustled gently in the night breeze, and the town glowed under the soft light of the street lamps. The reveals had not shaken Oakshade's foundation, but rather strengthened it, its citizens now aware that their past held cautionary tales and heroic sacrifices alike. As she strolled, she allowed herself to wonder about other locked boxes, hidden diaries, or undiscovered passages just waiting to be found. Perhaps Oakshade had more stories buried beneath its serene surface. But for now, a calm hush settled on the quiet streets. The nighttime chorus of crickets accompanied Cecilia on her walk home, the mystery resolved, and the town spirit warm with renewed unity. In her pocket, she felt the comforting weight of the orchard's pruning hook. Miss Purley had gifted it to her, She said it belonged with the woman who used it to free Oakshade from its centuries-old secret. Thinking of its significance, Cecilia Bell smiled to herself, savoring the fact that Oakshade's history had come full circle. After so long in the shadows, the betrayed founder's truth was revealed, and the community he had loved could finally honor him the way he had always deserved.